So this is section 10.2 notes, and I know it says it's about parabolas, and I know we've done all kinds of stuff already earlier in the year related to parabolas. So we're going to start by taking kind of a one step back, reviewing a little bit of what we've done, but then we are going to take it kind of into a place that we haven't seen before. So first of all, remember what we talked about yesterday in 10.1, and that was about how to classify. In other words, just by looking at the equation, can you tell which of these it is? So keep in mind the parabola is the one that only has one squared term, right? Whereas all three of these have two squared terms. Okay, and then so again, just keep in mind the circle is going to have the same coefficient. Remember, the ellipse has different coefficients. And when I say same or different, that means on the squared terms. And then remember, the hyperbola has a different sign. So different sign, one positive, one negative. Okay, my D looks like a, oh, there we go. So if we're going to label, I look at number 1. I've got two squared terms, a coefficient of 2 and 1, which is different. So that's how I know it's an ellipse. Okay, here I have two squared terms, one positive, one negative, so different sign. That's how I know it's a hyperbola. Look here, both of these squared terms have the exact same coefficient. They both have -2. It's fine to be negative. If they're exactly the same, that makes it be a circle. On number 4, I think we only have one squared term, right? The x is squared, so that's a parabola. And remember how we said if it's the x that's squared, it's the kind that opens up or down, the kind that we've done in the past. Number 5, look at that. There are no squared terms. Well, that's not in our list up there, but look carefully. If there's no squared terms, what is that? Isn't that just an equation of a line? So I kind of snuck that one in on you. And then look at number 6. Yes, there's only one square term, so I do know it's a parabola. But notice the difference between that one and number 4. On number 6, it was the y that was squared. On number 4, it was the x that's squared. So that means this is the kind that's a parabola, but this one's going to open either right or left. And that's what we're going to get into at the end of this section. Okay, so first let's remember what you learned about parabolas in the past, about vertex forms. So remember you would have y equals. There could be some number out in front, but then you would have x and maybe some number in the parenthesis. Like I'll just put a number. Let's say maybe out in front I have a 2. And in the parenthesis, maybe I have a 3. And maybe out at the end, I have a 4. So the 2, 3, and 4, those are just all places where you could have numbers, right? And so remember on this type, this is what we've done before. Remember the number out at the end is the number that shifts the whole thing up or down. Not if it opens up or down, if it just shifts the parabola up or down. And remember the number on the inside moves it right or left. Shift the whole thing right or left. And remember the number out in front is the thing that we kind of use air quotes for, and we call it the slope because it changes how steep your parabola takes off, or if it opens if it opens up or down, right? Depending on if it's positive or negative. So all of that is what we've done in the past. So look at number 1. I know this is a parabola. I see that the x is being squared. I'm going to move it 2 units to the right and 1 unit up. And remember that slope number out in front is a 1, so that's kind of like an up 1 over 1 type thing. So there's our parabola. And we've done that one a million times, right? So on number 2, because of that negative out in front, I know it's going to open down. So this parabola is moved to the left 1 and up 2. But because of that negative, I know it's opening down. So something like that. Okay, that's a sorry parabola. Sorry about that. Okay, not better, but there you go. Okay, so we've done that before. We don't need to go back and kind of rehash that. All right, but look at this next part. What if it's the y that's squared instead of the x? Okay, so I'm going to kind of pull this down a little bit. I'll have to make it smaller. There we go. So if it's the y that is being squared, instead of having y equals, then we're going to have x equals, you still might have some number out in front, but this time in the parenthesis, instead of it being the x, it's going to be the y. So that's the only difference in what the equation would look like. So you still might have a number out in front. You still might have a number on the inside. You still might have a number out at the end. And just like in the other one, these numbers tell us something about the parabola. And the fact that it's the y that's on the inside, that's how I know it's going to open either to the right or to the left. And I showed you a picture of that earlier. It might be that if it opens to the right, it goes that direction. It might be if it opens to the left, it goes that direction. Okay? So let's go over here. Let me write that down one more time. So we've got x equals, I'm going to put here, again, I'll just put a number. So maybe it's a 2, maybe it's a 3, and then maybe it's a 4. It's just, I don't have to put numbers. I just want you to know that's where numbers could go. Okay. So we just said, if the y is squared, we know the parabola opens either right or left. And I bet you could guess what determines if it opens right or left. Hopefully you can guess. It's whether or not there's a negative out in front. Just like if a parabola is opening up or down, what determines if it opens down is if there's a negative out in front. Okay, so that negative would make the parabola open left, meaning this direction. Okay, now the other numbers kind of change up. Things are different because if I'm switching up the x and y, then everything's opposite. Okay, everything's opposite. So in other words, on the other parabola, this told me if the whole thing shifted up or down. Okay, the opposite would be, this tells me if the parabola shifts left or right. Okay, so it's the opposite of the other kind of parabola, which means if the number out at the end tells me if the whole thing is shifted left or right, that means the number on the inside tells me if the whole thing is shifted up or down. Now, it's true that that number out in front, that 2 number, it does kind of affect the slope idea. We're not going to get into that with this because we're not going to go very in depth with this kind of a parabola. I just want you to see that it exists, that it's a thing, that not all parabolas open up or down. Okay, so look at number 3. Because it's the y being squared, and because there's a positive out in front right here, there's kind of like this implied 1 because it's positive. I know the parabola is going to open to the right. Okay, so remember how everything's the opposite. So this plus 1 tells me the whole thing is shifted, not up or down, but left or right. And remember, the numbers out there are not the opposite of what you would think. So this is going to shift to the right 1 unit. Okay, shift to the right 1 unit. Now on the inside, that 2 tells me if the whole thing goes up or down. But again, like before, remember how whatever's in the parentheses is like the opposite of what you would think? So where normally you might say down 2, really this is going to be shifted up 2. Okay, so from the origin, I'm going to go right 1, up 2. So there's my vertex. And we know this opens to the right. So there it is. Okay, I don't know why I ended in a little doodad like that, but there you go. Okay, let's try number 4. Now, because of that negative out in front, I know it's going to open to the left. So just keep that in mind. Okay, out at the end, remember that tells me right or left. So because it's a negative, we're going to say left 3. Okay, this tells me up or down. And remember, it's the opposite of what you would think. So if it's a plus, we're going to say down 1. So from the origin, we're going to go left 3, down 1. So there's my vertex. Because of the negative out in front, I know my parabola opens this direction. Okay, I know it's strange. It's completely the opposite. We're just kind of, hey, we're at the end of Algebra 2. You've finished up a whole year of math. So we're kind of throwing in at the end some of those really quirky kinds of things that we just don't get a chance to talk about all year. The things that don't come up quite as often. Okay, so on number 5, it's the y that's squared, so I know it's going to open right or left. Because of the negative, it's opening to the left. So this is going to tell me, I always have to stop and think because it messes with me. So normally it's up or down. So I know it's going to be right or left. So right 1. Okay, this means up or down, and it's the opposite. So up 2. So right 1, up 2. But because of the negative, we are going to open to the left. Okay. Still, it's the y that's squared. So it opens to the right, positive out in front. So it opens to the right. Now notice there's no parenthesis. Okay, that means that -3 is out at the end. So that means that that -3 is going to tell me we're shifting to the left 3. And since there's no parenthesis, it's not shifted up or down. So I just shift it to the left 3, but it's opening to the right. So I'll just draw it that direction. Okay, like I said, we're not going to go in depth on these. We just kind of want to be exposed to something that's different, a little different than what we've learned all year long. Okay, so this 10.2 homework, you'll notice that the first page, if you take a look, on every single one of them, it's the x that's being squared. It's the x that's being squared. It's x. So this is like the old days, right? All of these are going to either open up or down, okay? But when you get to the second page, after you do the labeling at the top, when you get to the second page, notice every single one of these has the y being squared. So that means every one of these is either going to open to the right or to the left. Okay, so that's just a few problems to try to kind of show you how it works.